first chart showing the west horizon to the left indicates it was still daylight, like the evening of day and the evening watch, with Mars and Moon high overhead. Two evening stars, normally blocked by the view of the sun, would be the brightness of Venus and Mercury evening stars, suddenly becoming visible with the sun, moon, and Mars. All can then be positions of the planets and luminaries becoming highly visible as to symbolically praise God, saying, "He planned all this," that the angel was telling the shepherds. I presented this to two churches my wife was the rector of, but because the audience was Episcopalians and knew little of astrology, I could not get across to them how important this revelation was. In July of 2017, I attempted to contact the Fort Worth Astrological Society and see if they wanted me to present my findings there. But as Bob Dylan sang, the times they are changing. The past leaders I knew had been replaced with a new woman in Austin, not Fort Worth, and meetup had become the rage at the time. She told me via digital communication how that group had many Christians and she did not want to upset anyone with a topic like what I offered, the Star of Bethlehem and the birthday of Jesus. Before I could make further inquiries, such as here at MAAS, my wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and caring for her became my only focus and concern. In early 2019, after my wife was in a clinical trial for her cancer and she was stable enough after treatments to function normally, I asked if she would be willing to edit a new book I had been wanting to write on the Star of Bethlehem. She wanted to help me make the topic available to a wider audience, so she agreed to be the editor. As I wrote each chapter, I would send an email to my wife. She would then edit each and email the file back to me with corrections. She then read the book as I wrote it, so she saw the book transforming differently than the courses she had attended. She said it was going in a good direction that she felt was necessary. The missing years were filled in by apocryphal works, which was something she had no knowledge of and found interest in. I was led to find those sources through insights leading my questions posed to the internet. What I asked for, I received. The book minimizes astrology while taking the timing of the documented ministry of Jesus and organizing it in a linear fashion with dates and times for his life based on a fixed birthday. A natal chart allowed me to utilize solar returns for each of the early unknown years until it reached his known ministry. Then the four Gospels create a narrative based on festival timings and knowing what Hebrew calendars match with that text. My wife passed away in late 2019, which led me to finish writing and publishing my book in 2020. I listed my wife as the editor. In the book's first chapter, I was only focused on the Christmas Epiphany stories told in Luke 2 and Matthew 2. It was later, when the Luke 1 readings came up, and following Advent, that I realized I missed important information that's stated there. This has to do with realizing the sixth month, as stated in Luke 1:26 and 1:36. That number is according to the Hebrew ecclesiastical calendar, where that month is Elul. It does not mean June, as that is a numbered month of the Roman calendar. Luke wrote that Mary was told by Gabriel she was pregnant in the sixth month, 6 months after her relative Elizabeth had become pregnant in the first month, Nisan. This means Elizabeth became pregnant at an old age in the month that is the equivalent to Aries. So Mary became pregnant in the 6th month of the Hebrew calendar, Elul, which is the equivalent to Virgo, the sign of the Virgin. That is significant. When you add 9 months to Elul, or Virgo, you come to Sivan, or Gemini, which justifies the calculations I entered showing a natal chart with a Gemini sun. When you add 9 months to Aries, you come to the winter solstice, where a Capricorn December 25th date means a celebration then is for the birth of John the Baptist. According to AI Overview, quote, John's purpose for preparing the way was for preparing the way to the coming of Jesus and baptizing people in preparation for him. John was divinely appointed to make ready a path for the Lord, signifying the transformative baptism of the Spirit and fire that Jesus would bring, end quote. This means the recognition of Christmas on December 25th is a celebration of John's birth, knowing that birth precedes a spiritual rebirth of Jesus to come later. It does not diminish December 25th as important, but it can greatly modify the commercialization of a spiritual rebirth, replacing gifts of frankincense and gold with camel hair wool, leather belts, and locusts tucked into stockings by the fireplace. This graphic calculates a 38-week pregnancy with the approximate normal length of a human pregnancy now being 40 to 41 weeks, 40 average. However, in ancient times when pregnant women walked everywhere, did lifting at wells, cooked, cleaned, cared for other children, were generally much more active than modern women. AI Overview on Google agrees that a 37 to 38 week pregnancy would have been normal. All the timing of Jesus' birth led me to produce 2 classes revealing what the Star of Bethlehem was became only a small portion of the book I published. The first chapter presents this process I went through in coming to the amazing chart in a briefer version of tonight's presentation. The book differs from the classes by eliminating a need to justify astrology as not condemned in the Holy Bible. Without that focus, it discerns the life of Jesus based on knowing when his life began. The bulk of the chapters takes the text of the 4 Gospels and dovetails them into a linear timeline. The unknown years of Jesus led to me looking at solar returns and using them as yearly directions based on the natal nature. That led to the apocryphal sources that helped fill in those gaps. Still, apocryphal means generally unrecognized information, thus logically questionable. The missing years were able to be seen somewhat through solar return charts. I did not publish any, but I cast them and looked at them for yearly focus they implied. Here's one of Jesus' 12-year-old boy based on knowing accurate birth data. Notice how the chart projects one older than his years and gaining attention teaching religion. This is seen in the 9th house, Mars conjunct the midheaven in Aries, along with Saturn and Cancer conjunct the ascendant in the 1st house. This matches the short story in Luke about a boy, Jesus, being found in the temple teaching Judaic scholars. This would have been after Pentecost, when Jesus turned 12. With the birth data known, the life of Jesus is possible to be placed into one narrative with ages, years, dates, and even hours discerned. This was especially true for Jesus' last Passover festival. According to the timing of the Passover, as stated in the Gospels, only the years 25 and 29 can generally match some text. The year 25 does not match the year of Herod's renovations of the temple, nor when Pilate was prefect in Judea, so it gets thrown out. Knowing 29 is a specific year that allows one to see an 8-day Passover week, many Christians are blind to this number. This graphic shows how the biblical text makes it possible to see time jumps largely unrecognized relative to 2 Seder meals, when Jesus was arrested, appeared before Pilate, then Herod, back to Pilate, when he was flogged and ridiculed, and when he was crucified, died, and how he was dead for 3 full days, resurrecting in the tomb on a Sabbath. Text can be read like it's all happening quickly, rather than on the logic of days passing. Over that time, it would be logical that meetings with a governor and a king took time to schedule having 8 days to work with allows for this. While my book does not include astrological charts, knowing a birth data allows event charts to be cast. Those verify the natal chart by transits contacting significant natal positions. This is the death event chart of Jesus. From knowing the birth data, one can see Jesus died in 29 AD on April 20th. That calendar perfectly matches the Passover festival timing that is stated in the Gospels. Thus, Jesus also ascended in that year on June 4th, the 49th day after the Passover began. It was also a Sabbath, the day before Pentecost Sunday. This is the event chart that can be cast for Jesus' ascension. Because the Hebrew calendar is lunar-based, this is not a solar return chart. A Hebrew birth on 5 Sivan is not equal in solar placement to an ascension on 5 Sivan. Jesus was 37 at the time of death, April 20th, 29. He would have turned 38 the following month, according to the Roman date of May 25th, 29. That would have been his age when he ascended on June 4th, 29, which is 4 Sivan, Hebrew calendar. However, once one is dead, the clock for birth dates stops ticking. This is the ascension chart for Jesus, which took place 9 days after his solar return chart. The solar return chart is on the left, the ascension chart is on the right. Notice how both the death event chart and the ascension event chart connect with the natal chart's T-squared. Transiting Pluto is in opposition to natal Sun, natal Mercury in the death event chart. Pluto retains that opposition in the ascension event chart, while transiting Saturn conjoins natal Sun Mercury, being in opposition to transiting Pluto. As that opposition is in place, transiting Jupiter is conjunct the descendant in opposition to natal Pluto, connecting to the natal opposition. This is a transiting Grand Cross forming with the natal chart at the ascension. Another element that is similar to the angel appearing before the shepherds is that which happened after Jesus disappeared into a cloud on his ascension. Acts 1:10 tells of 2 men dressed in white suddenly appearing. Could this be the Dioscuri? The early church had a difficult time discouraging its pagan followers from worshiping the Castores, or those 2 men who are the Gemini twins. Why? By realizing Jesus was born and ascended when the sun was high overhead in the sign of Gemini, the 2 men dressed in white could be those celestial twins symbolically. Jesus is said to be divine and human, or fully God and fully man, and this is symbolized by the myth of Castor and Pollux. To tell the apostles, stop looking up, Jesus will return just as he ascended, says the soul of Jesus will be the immortal that joins with each of their mortal souls as a divine possession. The Greeks call this eudaimonia. This means a saint is 2 souls in one physical body, making that become a holy infant soul, knowing the hidden things others cannot see or do. This is the fulfillment of the promise of John the Baptist, thus Christmas. Disciples transformed into apostles. The early church had many more saints. Speaking of the Castores as hidden meaning, today saints are like unicorns. So it comes down to how one sees astrology playing out in these verses. Many Christians are in denial that astrology is a tool created by God. By misreading the Star of Bethlehem, do you think Magi follow some celestial phenomenon? So much press was allotted to the Christmas star of 2020 when Jupiter and Saturn made their appointed rounds together momentarily in December. I have begun to write a follow-up book that posted many charts for events and explained those, but I was called away for something I'm better suited for. That book can be written by one with better astrology skills than I possess, now that I'm old and rusty. Science is wise and prudent, but stick astrology before its eyes, like Jung and Gauquelin did, and science is blind as a bat. Scientists did not get the call to paint the Sistine Chapel. Scholars, like Gerard Guteau and many others, have no ability to read divine text with divine syntax. They can read the words of Scripture with the best of the wise and mentally skilled, but to see natal charts like I have presented to you tonight, they are uninterpretable and meaningless. That leaves us, that I propose, up to astrologers, who realize astrology is an art that speaks a divine language, requiring more than the sum of the parts to understand. This is my opinion, which I hope I have made reasonable to see through logical assumptions and physically assisted astrological charts. I attempted to have scholars and news reporters come judge this presentation, offering them my credentials to analyze. No one responded to my offers. Regardless of credentials, my opinion is mine. Only I can see what my mind's eye shows me. You must be able to see for yourself what is true or false based on logic and critical thinking. Some of the books that I jumped to, maybe I missed one. Some of the books are available to be purchased directly. Some of my books are available to be purchased directly from the printer at a discounted rate if you scan the QRC. My website, katrinapearls.com, lists these with the QRC as well. So you just go directly to them, and postage and all that is taken care of. The Star of Bethlehem has been discounted more in case anybody wants to own a copy. And thank you again for allowing me to offer this to you and for having the patience to listen to what I have to say. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions.
Wow, thank you so much.
Wow, so much research, so much work, thank you.
If there's no questions, I want to add that in 10 BC, on December 24th at 11:59:59, according to NASA, but 11:30 p.m. on the 24th is a solar eclipse. That would have been when John the Baptist would have been born with a solar eclipse. But the solar eclipse went from South America, the tip of South America, through Antarctica to the tip of Africa. And it was not a full solar eclipse. It was one where the moon is too far away to fully block the sun. So it casts a part of a shadow through Antarctica. But I think it's significant that John the Baptist was born during an eclipse because he was going to be eclipsed. He was born to be the first, and another's going to come after him. So I mean, there's a lot of things that if any scholars would come and ask the questions, I'm prepared. I got both barrels loaded, but I know you. And it's getting late.
Wow, so much to absorb. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions in the audience?
I have a question. What is the diaspora?
That's Gemini. Dioscuri. They're Castorius.
Yes.
It's the same.
Okay, yeah.
That's a Greek word for the Gemini twins.
Yeah, I wish I'd written down the other question I had. I might not be able to think of it for a minute, and y'all, it's done. We're done now, so too bad. Yeah, there was, okay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you, Robert.
I wish I remembered the question without.
Well, if it comes up, I got an answer.
Can you put the birth chart of Jesus back up real quick?
The birth chart for Jesus.
Yeah.
Do you want the one with all of the planets?
Sure. We didn't really get a chance to see it, and I'm gonna screenshot it if you don't care and study it. Got it, thank you.
And again, the chart, I don't know if you saw the chart where the Magi arrived in Bethlehem and cast a horary chart. Did you see that one? Because the moon is not part of this configuration, but 2 days later, when they got there and arrived, the moon was part of it. So you have the moon joining with all of these others in this major T-square.
I did, so the.
See, I will stand before you and talk about a T-square being Jesus rather than any of those other things that just, and I'm not gonna go there, but I think this is pretty clear to me. And again, the birth date of 9 BC, I had no way of knowing that. You go and you look for what, you do a Google AI search, when was Jesus born? There's not going to be anybody that says 9 BC. It's like, I had no reason to go there other than this one guy, Gerard Gertou, posting 10 BC as the census, the general census. The general census, another thing I did on the AI search, is Herod was called King of the Jews by the Roman Senate. The Roman Senate got together and said he is a client king and Judea is a client country. He is the king of that country. So Judea under Herod was not part of the Roman Empire, it was separate. So when Augustus Caesar says, I'm going to have a census, it did not apply to Herod unless Herod had his own census to go. Now, another search of AI says, would Augustus Caesar have demanded people in the Roman Empire go to where they were born to be registered? And AI says, no, that would be stupid. The Roman Empire would ask everybody to stay where they are to get counted, and it's for taxes purposes. So the general census was a census by Herod that he had to get approved by the Caesar, and Caesar would say, go ahead, and then Herod would say, go to where you were born and register there. And this would have to do with the fact that there's so many people who are Jews that moved out of Judea. But they come back every year, so they need to be taxed for the temple that they come to worship at. So you go to where you were born before you moved out of the country, and you're going to be charged a tax based on where you were born to pay for the beautification of the temple. So 10 BC is not going to be one of those things that Josephus wrote about, or somebody in Rome, because it was a Herod census. But Herod had to get it approved through Caesar, and then Herod would go and make the stipulations, you got to go to where you were born in order to register. So it's like, I think that's what's blinded a lot of the scholars, that they don't look at that one. Gerard Gertou just happened to be one who saw it, and it just happened to be the one that I was led to find, because if I hadn't found that, I wouldn't be here before you talking about something that's not a Grand Cross, a T-square. But anyway.
I thought of the question, it's simple. Would it Gerard Coutu, do you mind spelling that?
Well, what?
The Frenchman, Gerard Rutu or Coutu, how do you spell it?
Gertous. Gertous. Gertu. Gerard, Gerard.
Okay.
And
That, but the Coutu,
after I published the book and I listed Gerard Gertu, I went through a website called academia.com and looked him up, and he's in Lyon, France, at a university there. He's in his 70s, he's my age. I sent him an email, just through that, hey, I wanted to thank you for having given me this information, that I put your name in my book, and I'm just sending him a general thank you for having put it out there, because it made me see when Jesus was born, and I shared that with him. And then I had 12 books sold in France that year.
Oh, really?
That was the most books I sold in 1 year ever.
Wow,
Fascinating.
very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, thanks again.
yes,
We
and
really
bravo.
appreciate
It's
all your work.
fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating.
And it's fascinating to me too that, the T-square, I think some might assume that it would be an easier chart, considering who he was, but on the other hand, hard aspects make for, well, I used to say, when I was a kid growing up, there was a sunbeam bread, and
Yeah.
it said, build strong body 12, build strong bodies 12 ways. And so I kind of think of a harder chart as building your backbone, or really having to step up to the plate kind of a thing.
And I was I was a big fan of Kate Bush, and she would publish. She'd put an album out, and then it would be 5 years later she'd put another one out, and they would all be great. And you just wanted it to be more frequent, just
Yeah.
put more out, because I just loved her voice, and she was a beautiful woman, and that's just, she had this, she was led, kind of mentored by the guitarist for Pink Floyd, forget his name right now,
David Gilmour.
David Gilmour, and he mentored and kept her from going into the business too soon. But you can see that when I looked at her chart, that Grand Cross, it's like this merry-go-round. Once you start one thing, you've got opposition, but you're forced to do something by this one, but whatever you do makes this one want to force in reaction back to you. So it's a life of constant struggle. And it's like, that's really what Jesus had. And then when you read in the Bible, he had some ignorant disciples following him around, number one, but he knew that they were sincere. But then he had some ignorant people that were the Pharisees that thought they knew everything, and he would have these confrontations with them. One of the things from looking at the apocryphal stuff, the history, especially the infancy gospel of Thomas, that tells about Jesus when he was a child, there were some people in Nazareth who would become later the high priests of Jerusalem, that they had taken over that position from the Levites. And Jesus was born of the Levite family, and so Joseph was a Levite, but the Levites were no longer allowed to be high priests. But there was one who Jesus as a child knocked off a roof and killed him because he was angry at him. And Jesus went down and healed him, told him to get up. And then all the people came and they started blaming Jesus and calling him this name or that name. He says, okay. So the kid died again. So it's like there's some impishness in Jesus where he had this power, and he knew he had this power. And in fact, I read long ago that the Muslims in the Quran record that when the shepherds went to see the baby Jesus was like preaching or speaking, as an infant. And this made a lasting impression on those people, but you don't see that written. But in the Quran, they say that Jesus was this Messiah because he was that at such an early age. As a newborn, he was doing amazing things. But that's the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha also goes into India. And India has the lore of a person who's not named Jesus, but he has another name who has all the mannerisms of Jesus. And this would be when he was like in his 18 to 20 year period. It's about 7 years he was in India and Persia. And then he came back, and I see Mary Magdalene was like a high priestess as an infant who was set aside to be married to the Messiah, who would be married to Jesus. And when Jesus returned, they were married, and they had a child, and the child's name is John, and it's John the Beloved who writes one of the Gospels. And I explained this to my wife because people don't see John as being a child or as an adult remembering his life as a son, as a child of Jesus. But he's not a disciple because he's never with Jesus when the disciples are around Jesus. He's only with Jesus on certain days, especially during the Passover days of the holy days. But I explained to my wife, when Jesus is risen, it talks about the women who go to the tomb and find out that he's risen. And then Mary runs back and tells Peter and John that they've taken my Lord. They've taken him away. The tomb is empty. Okay, well, it becomes a race from the home where they were staying to go to the tomb. And John easily beats Peter because John is a child and can take shortcuts. But when John gets there first, he knows I'm not an adult. I'm not allowed in the tomb. So he waits for Peter to come in, and Peter goes in the tomb. And I explained to my wife, that's talking about a child. And her eyes just went, psh, I see it, So it's like, I can see it, but if you can't see it, it doesn't matter what I see. But I see John as the son of Jesus. John he married a Jew in Egypt. They had a child together whose name was Sarah. And Sarah with Mary Magdalene, Mary Salome, Mary, the wife of Cleopas, and also a man who was born blind, who was healed by Jesus, and Lazarus. They were all put on this raft without a rudder and without a sail and set out in the Mediterranean to drown, and they made it to St. Mary's Little Sea, which is what they call it, in coastal France. And that is, if you read the book Holy Grail, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, that is, they worship Sarah. They call her the Black Madonna. There's all kinds of basilicas that are built in her name, and there are Romans who travel every year to St. Mary's of the Sea twice a year for festivals in the name of St. Sarah. And she is the foundation for the kings of Europe who became of the blood of Christ. Therefore, they have the right to rule. So it's you got to wonder, where does all this tie in? You got to see John as being, John lived to be 90 years old. He's blind in Patmos. But all the others were dead because he was so young. He lived that long. And he had already married, led his wife take the baby, and they went and started a new thing. It's, it's amazing the work that I've done with translating the scripture as designated by the Episcopal lectionary. When you get into actual Greek for the New Testament or the Hebrew, and that's how you read Nostradamus. There's divine syntax that you can't go paraphrasing. It doesn't allow you to paraphrase. You got to read each word and the word's order. And you got to see importance in each word, and then you got to connect the importance to importance to see the depth. And that's why Jesus said, "Thank you, Lord, for hiding these things from the wise and intelligent." Because the wise and intelligent were the people he was talking about, the Pharisees, who thought they knew some stuff, but didn't know squat. That's how you go wrong. And that's where the saints come in, that it requires being a saint in order to understand the hidden things and to show other people that meaning. To me, the story of the guy who was born blind was healed by Jesus once he had his sight. And this is not written, but he was the one who was sent. He went to work for Jesus' wife, Mary, and her sister, Martha, in Bethany. He was there with Lazarus, her brother. And when Lazarus fell ill, he was the one that was told to go to the other side of the Jordan to tell Jesus that Lazarus is ill, come quick and heal him. So when he gets there, he's going through Jericho. Well, there's these blind guys sitting outside the wall in Jericho. And this guy says, "Hey, I can't do anything for you, but there's going to be a guy come back through here. His name's Jesus. If you hear the name Jesus, you start screaming out for him, because I was born blind and I was made to see." And sure enough, when Jesus was coming through Jericho, and he had to wait until Lazarus was dead before he did that, because he wanted to prove a point, and he comes back, and these guys are screaming out, "Jesus, Jesus, heal us." And they were healed of their blindness, which might have been cataracts or something like that, rather than being born blind. But, it's like you just see these things and you disconnect them because it's not connected in text. But you've got to be able to see, you got to put yourself there. And that's what I was trying to do tonight, is put you there through the gospel readings so that you can see the logic, that if I was there, I would think this. This makes sense. If it was today, it would be that way. So let's think of it that way. And Lazarus and this man, I can't remember his name, but it's on the internet if you want to search it. He was one of the two people who landed in St. Mary's of the Sea, and then they all went to 6 different locations and became saints. And he went, I forget where, somewhere along the eastern coast of France. And they were all they did miracles wherever they went. And they spread Christianity just from their presence, not by what they told people to believe, but what they did. And, it's just amazing, the actions that speak louder than words. But again, I told you, if I'm not scripted.
It's just like ripples that just keep going
That's
out.
That's right. I could go on and on and on. My wife used to kick me under the table when someone would ask me about Nostradamus. Because I would tell them way more than they wanted to know. And they'd be going, "How do I get out of this?" And she would kick me.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Well, I wanted an audience of people that were astrologers that could understand this.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important.
And do you discuss some of what you were discussing in the last 5 minutes? Is that in your book, or is it in Holy Grail,
Not so much what I was talking about specifically, but in the Star of Bethlehem, I go through the Bible, and if you see there's 4 different books that are the Gospels, and if you read one separate from reading the other, you see that they repeat the same stories. So what I did is I chopped them off, cut them off, put them together, splice them together, so that it's a timeline that tells the story. And I think in this, I tell about the story of the blind man going to tell Jesus that Lazarus is ill, you need to come. And Jesus says, he's just sleeping. So he stays an extra couple of days before he goes back to make sure. And then, it's like all of this is part of the Bible, so all of this is part of the book. And I add my 2 cents on that.
And it's believed that he was married, or in some sort of he was married to Mary Magdalene?
Mary Magdalene was there.
What? Did you say Jesus was married to Mary?
Yes. I believe that's a marriage that was arranged. Nazareth is a holy place. I forget the name of the mountain that it's close to, but it is where the first priest would go, and Jesus has said that he would fulfill the prophecy of being born a Nazarene. Well, a Nazarene is not someone born in Nazareth so much as this one who is a Nazarite. And a Nazarite is one of the people that is priestly of basically the sect. My mind goes blank, but the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and you have the Essenes, or Essenes, however you pronounce it. Jesus was an Essene, and the people who lived in Nazareth were the priests that were Essenes, mostly, and that Jesus would have been seen as the Messiah by the Essenes, and Mary would have been a high priestess at birth, set aside and groomed to be the wife of Jesus. But Jesus, when he turned 13 and had his bar mitzvah, got prepared to go on a journey, so he went to the east, and then when he came back, I believe he married, had a child, and went to Greece. In one of the gospel readings, it says about the Greeks come, and the disciples said, some Greeks are here to see you. That sounds like, hey, who are these Greeks? Well, they go back to the infancy gospel of Thomas. The only friends that Joseph had basically in Nazareth, with all these people who would become the high priest in Jerusalem, who had this anger against Joseph and the Essenes or Essenes. They didn't like one another, but the Greeks became the friends. So you got these Indian people and you got these Greek people that in both of these apocryphal stories are coming to meet with Jesus, and you don't understand any of that just from reading the gospel. You don't understand where these Greek people pop up from. What does that have? Why are they Greek? What does that mean? But I think there are people who he knew from his childhood. And it all ties in together. And again, it can be fantasy. It's not something that I can prove. It's just what makes logical sense.
Fascinating.
Very fascinating, yes.
And I just, Mary Magdalene did some, things that Martha didn't like, because here I am working hard and she's just laying at your feet, and massaging your feet with her hair and oil and all this and stuff, and Jesus was telling Martha, you know, just calm down.
Fantastic. Anybody else have any questions? Okay,
Well, thank you all again.
thank you,
Thank
thank you so much. All right, we'll see you folks next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you for a great thing.
I don't know what I can do with anything because I'm on hotel internet.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm gonna have to like get home. I dropped my phone, broke it. It won't even work.
Oh,
I mean, it works some ways. It'll actually receive a call, but if it doesn't recognize Google, so I can't do all the things. So I gotta get in my little spot at home
Yeah,
and make everything work again.
yeah.
And then I can send you that file,
Oh, no problem, yeah.
and you can make it available to anybody that has any questions. And I will edit this and post it and let you know what address that is.
Okay.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry about your phone, that's
Yeah.
always a drag, it's like our lifeline now, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, really, you don't notice until it's gone, how much you rely on this.
Yeah, you go into panic mode.
I lost one of my